So Mark, this is the first time that we've spoken in many years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of when it was. I left on May 23rd, 2013. Happen to remember that day. But we hadn't talked before that for a few months.
Yeah, so we experienced this debacle from opposite, often adversarial sides. I remember, to me, the most significant meeting that we had was at Fran's restaurant. I was reporting out the fact that I believed that the mayor had a serious drinking problem, likely a drug problem, that he was missing work, that it was impacting his job, that staff wanted him to go to rehab. And I went to you sort of saying, this is what I have, what's going on? Like, talk to me on background here. And I remember you looking at me and saying, your information isn't correct. I felt, you know, when I'm reading your book, and I really felt like the book should be called Uncontrollable, My Year Trying to Conceal the Truth.
I remember that conversation. And I remember that, by and large, I didn't bite or comment or remark in any way other than to ask for the ketchup, I think, about any of that stuff, because I wasn't going to bite, because you're very good at that. You're very good at laying out and being a sympathetic character and kind of, come on, I know this, just agree with me. 1,000 people have already said this. And
I had a lot, maybe not 1,000 people,
but I wasn't going to bite into that. But the one piece that you had said about that, there was a very specific piece of information about cocaine use at the beer market, which, from all of my sources, and I believe them implicitly, was not true. And that's the piece that I said was, but I didn't tell you which piece it was. I said, your information is not correct.
Right.
And I stand by that statement to this day. I never lied to you, and I never lied to any of the media. I may have allowed you to make assumptions that weren't necessarily true, but I don't believe that I lied to you, and I don't believe that our staff did as well. I won't speak for the politicians, because they do what they do. But it was very important to me and to our staff that we not lie to people.
You know, when we did publish our story about the Garrison Ball, and the mayor held a press conference and said, you know, called us pathological liars. It generated death threats for me, thousands of hate mail letters. I had to get the police involved at certain points. Other colleagues experienced similar things. Is there not a duty there to say, this is true?
I'm not sure why there would be a duty on us to say, oh, the guy that we work for is not telling you the truth. It was our duty to never lie, and we never did.
But he's the elected official.
Yeah. He's
made a decision to get into public life. He's a powerful man. He's the mayor of the largest city in Canada. Am I supposed to ignore the fact that he's smoking crack with alleged gang members who are smuggling, who police say are smuggling guns into the city because he has problems at home?
Very far after that. And
but again, drugs was part of the conversation by 2012.
It was part of your conversation, but it wasn't founded on anything. And again, in the book, a lot of information about when information became out. People now look at Rob Ford through a telescope, and all of this stuff is collapsed together as if it all happened at the same time, and it didn't. And I think that's important to understand. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book, was to sort of say, this is how it developed.
We always chose to leave Renata out of it, to leave his home life out of it, to leave the kids out of it, unless absolutely necessary. There's this thing that we always talk about, is it interesting to the public, or is it in the public interest? And I'm curious to hear why you felt that story needed to be mentioned now.
It was something that I really struggled with for a long time, and it took me a year to figure out whether or not I could or should write a book in the first place. And then going through what's going to be in the book and how do I tell this story in a way that's meaningful, it was a tough decision, deciding that some of that part of the story had to be told in order to understand what was happening with him. Because you're right, a lot of the stuff that was happening with the family was rightly, and to the credit of the media, was never covered and shouldn't have been covered. You knew about issues in the home, but you didn't want to report on that part of it. But the problem is, you did choose to report on the other half of it, and the other half of it was perhaps an unfair characterization, given that you didn't report the other half of that issue. So, I mean, I think I think that one goes both ways.
You mean the fact that I'd reported that his in-laws had called 911 to say that he was drunk and driving his kids to the airport, but I didn't report the fact that his wife has issues of her own.
Yeah.
So, and what I would say to that is, he's the elected official. She never asked for any of this. And
I agree with that 100%.
Right.
But because you take that piece of the puzzle out, you're left with an incomplete story that leads down a path that editorially you guys want to go.